OG Rose, and today we're going to be talking about Thomas Jockin's upcoming course, Plato on Beauty and Virtue at the Halkyon Academy. It will be starting this Saturday, the 27th. Highly suggest there are multiple options for signing up. And I would suggest also Mr. Jockin's recent conversations and streams with Johannes, Dr. Niebenhauser, which can be found on the Halkyon YouTube channel. Jockin has made a very, very convincing case that basically if we do not take beauty seriously, it will be very difficult for us to maintain our humanity. There's an argument to be made that if we don't educate ourselves in a manner to experience beauty, we're hardly educated at all. And that though we perhaps have through history emphasized and thought about and explored goodness and truth, we have not really made beauty central in our thinking like we need to. As a result, we have certainly really lost what you could argue in Plato is the binding principle of reality, that beauty is what holds things together. There's this tradition of this idea that you need some kind of ground in being, some sort of grounding to make things themselves, some sort of essence. Now, substance, form, essence, these are all not technically the same in classical thought. But we've also come to a point in philosophy where there seems to be something problematic about talking about grounds and the grounds of things. And yet at the same time, it seems like there has to be some sort of principle that keeps things together, that makes things intelligible, that pulls us toward them in a manner that forms us and that opens our apprehension to that thing. Well, there's a way in which we could say that in Plato we find reason to think that beauty is like substance. Beauty is the basis of reality. It is what makes reality intelligible to us and us toward reality, ever moving toward it. In this way, beauty is the ultimate thing. It is... if goodness was not beautiful, who would care? It might just be moralism. If truth wasn't beautiful, it might just be cold fact. There is something about beauty that effuses everything and pulls us toward the world in a manner that makes us want the world. People have discussed the meaning crisis today. We might think of that as a beauty crisis. The problem is we've often conflated beauty and aesthetics, the merely pleasing or the merely technical, like a set table or a neat room. And of course, there is something aesthetic to beauty, but it does not seem reducible to beauty. There is a certain strike of beauty, a certain moment where beauty strikes you that is mysterious. It is here and then it is gone, and it seems to be accessible to the degree we have cultivated and conditioned ourselves according to virtue, so that we may resonate with the beautiful, and so that the beautiful may call out to us. So there's a strong connection between virtue and beauty, and thus we cannot reduce beauty to mere taste, even if there is something about taste that has to deal with beauty. There's a way in which, as Mr. Jockin has pointed out, virtue, there is something about virtue that makes you want and long for excellent things. Like, virtue works on taste. Virtue works on what we desire and what we want. So you can't really separate taste and virtue, taste and desire, taste and who we are in our character. There is something where an excellent person wants excellent things, but then at the same time there's something about excellence that runs the risk of being, say, haughty or upper class or arrogant. But this is not the way that we see beauty being thought about in Plato, nor virtue being talked about in Plato. There is something very mysterious about virtue and beauty in Plato. But by mystery, we don't mean unknowable. We mean that the more you come to know, the more you find there's more to know, which I believe comes up in Flannery O'Connor. The difference, as we'll talk about, Michelle and I, between unknowable and unknown. To say something is unknowable means it cannot be accessed. To say it is unknown means there's an adventure to be had. And this is, in the feeling of adventure, I think, is something that Plato gives us, that Jockin brings out, that we can then apply to beauty and virtue. There's a sense in which I think today often we're like, oh, we ought to be virtue. There's a kind of like, oh, right, we should do that. It's not really an adventure. Likewise, we're like, oh, right, the beautiful, that's important. Yeah, I should read literature. I should read some great novels. But it's more from a place of duty or a sense of I should to be cultured. But in Plato, we find thinking that brings adventure to beauty and virtue, that brings a certain journey to them that then is exciting to engage in. And I think that kind of exciting, that motivation, that intrinsic motivation, as Michelle and I will talk about, that seems to be what is needed for addressing a meaning crisis, for addressing nihilism. And so beauty is central to this. And that came out with Jockin's conversation with Viveke, which then leads us to the question of how we might scale the conditions that increase the probability that the average person on Earth has an experience of beauty. And that would seem to be the political, economy, and sociological address needed for considering the meaning crisis, a scaling of the conditions of beauty and virtue. And Mr. Jockin makes that case very well. And so I highly suggest signing up for the course. It is an opportunity to live life in a new, more beautiful, and more virtuous way. I cannot think of a better scholar on the topic of beauty than Thomas Jockin. So be sure to sign up today. And for more, please visit the Halkyon Academy. And please check out all the different options for signing up and listen to the content that they have put out about the course. And thank you so much for your time.